to the Total Potential Podcast. We have a sibling solo cast today with Jake and myself, Cole, and we're super excited to have you here. So thanks for taking the time to be with us today. Jake, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Fabulous. Glad to have this time together.
Yeah, for sure.
Jake and I often joke that we should just automatically record our conversations because even if we just call to say, hey, how are you? Inevitably, we'll go down some rabbit hole of self-discovery or life and family or whatever it is. So today we're recording on purpose. So today we have an interesting topic, and this is something that has stuck with me for a long, long time. After I had our middle son, so just over 10 years ago, I decided that I was leaving my job as a dietitian in a hospital because, surprise, surprise, dietitians don't make that much money, and I was breaking even on working basically full time and paying for daycare. So decided to make a break and stay home with a family. And I will never forget this. Apparently I haven't. It's been on my heart for 10 years. I had a hard time saying goodbye to patients because, these people, I was with them for 3 years, and especially people who were in the hospital often. I mean, these people were friends, really. They were people I cared a lot about. And I went in to see this one young girl, and her mom was just so lovely, and they were such a sweet family. And I said, I'm really going to miss you guys. But it's, feels like the right thing to do. And this mom was so sweet. And she just said, you know what? I think you're making the right decision. She said, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once.
Hmm.
And in that moment, I hadn't really realized actually that I was trying to have it all, like juggle the career, juggle serving a certain patient population, juggling, being married to a resident and having babies and living in a big city. And you put all these balls in the air. And I hadn't really realized that I was trying to have it all. I really felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do. But that comment has lingered, even though my life stage has really changed. And so I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about it today because I think it bears a lot of truth, especially through that early phase of having children, building a career, getting the house, and then settling into that. So I don't know, Jake, what comes up for you with that statement? You can have everything, but you can't have it all at once.
Yeah, I mean, what a great thing to hear from somebody, right? I mean, it's first because it's so true, and you brought up an awesome point in what you just said, right? Is especially when we're younger and we're in that kind of build phase of starting our families and our careers and all this stuff. You kind of get caught in whatever the programming's been, right? Of like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is how I'm supposed to live, and I need this type of house, and I better have this 401k at a certain balance, and all this stuff, right? Like we kind of been conditioned our whole lives to think like if you don't have a certain status, that you're wrong or you're not as good or whatever. And then I think as you grow into figuring out yourself and then settling into your life, you realize that a lot of that stuff, it just doesn't simply apply to everybody's life, or maybe it does, but not the same way, So I think that's an awesome way to start the conversation is like, what does that mean? Right. Like what does having it all mean to people? I think that's probably different for you and I as it is for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and when she first said that, honestly, it felt like a pass. It was the first time I felt like, oh, well, yeah, I can choose what is the most important thing to me right now. And, there's all kinds of juxtaposition around that, right? Like, had I been making money at my job, the decision actually would have been much, much harder because, it was expensive living in a big city. My husband was a medical resident. It's not like he was making a lot of money. And I really did feel some responsibility toward contributing to our life there in that way. But once I realized that I wasn't actually doing that, but was feeling obligated to continue in the workforce, despite the fact that it was clearly not working for our family financially, emotionally, just in terms of overwhelm, it felt like she handed me a pass. Like, you go do what you need to do right now. And it allowed me, just that one statement, to completely shift my focus and shift my priority internally to exactly what you're saying. Like, what is important to me? Like, why has, and for some people, the answer might be like, it is really important to me to go to work and serve a certain person, contribute to society in a particular way, in a way that like makes you tick. But every day for me, when I would drop my babies off at daycare, my heart would just like sink. Like, I'm going to go to work and it's important work. I really cared about the people that I was working with, but I'm leaving behind like my most important thing to go do that. And so that was really eye opening for me. And I didn't really realize that that was happening. But I do think, Jake, like you said, when we get into that phase of, you're just like clipping along, you're checking all these boxes of that programming of what you're supposed to do. Well, I mean, for you, how did you slow down that programming? Like, how did you find the space to find what you cared enough about so that having it all wasn't somebody else's version?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been a journey, a long one. Still to this day, one that I have to make sure I'm very aware of and understand for myself if I am stretching myself too thin. Um, because, and I think you said it perfectly. Until you, and for me, for sure, until I truly figured out like what was actually the main priority of life, it's really hard to know what having it all is. Because early on in my life, when I was playing hockey and doing that thing, that was for me my motivation in that world, which is weird because I've never really had any attachment to money at all. But for some reason, I've chased it for a large percentage of my working adult life. Um, and I think that might be an ego thing, or that might be a status thing, like, oh, all these other guys I play with, or, people that I surround myself with, they have more money than me. So that must mean they're better than me, which, obviously, that's something that a conditioning that has changed radically in my life. And I've actually found, which is super interesting, is the detachment from the result in this circumstance, i.e., the money. You actually wind up having more financial success if you're focusing on things that fulfill you or make you better at your career, or have the more of the impact kind of actions instead of always thinking about the result. I want more, I want more, I want more.
Yeah.
What we probably, for me especially, what I need to ask myself is like, I want more fulfillment, I want more purpose, things like that. And then in turn, right, without even thinking about it, then all that other stuff that you thought you wanted, God just puts it down at your feet, like, here you go, like, right, I mean, it's there for you. Now what are you going to do with it, so I think, for me, like I said, it's something that I have to be aware of and pray about every single day. But until I found that having it all for me meant that starts with my personal development, with all the areas of my life, with faith being the core of that. And then the second tier of that bullseye, or ring of that bullseye, is my family. So if those two things are getting strengthened every single day, then from there I can go out and be of service, and I can do a really good job in my career, and I can build my business and do all that stuff without there being any thought or guilt, I guess, of like, am I really positioning myself or spending my time where I should, so.
Yeah. Well, you said a couple of really important things there because when you do take on so much, without doing it purposely, like just kind of letting life happen, right? And doing the things you're supposed to do and signing the kids up for the things they're supposed to be signed up for and whatever, you get spread so thin. And when you're spread thin like that, it's like you're really not good at any of it, right?
For sure.
And the other thing, and I've really had to get clear about that. That is a very uh, powerful and common story in our culture, that we are busy and that we want to be busy, and that busyness is like a badge of honor. I would say busyness is more like a badge of numbing. Like it's a way to avoid whatever is happening in your life. There's no time to think. But it's so easy. I mean, I've been there. I've been caught up in that cycle for sure, and worn it like a badge of honor. Like, oh yeah, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. Like, who is winning the award for not getting enough sleep? Like, why is that even something we talk about? Like, why do we want to tip the scales so far in any direction that we're so off balance? But again, like, it's all around us. We have to really bring that awareness piece, like you're saying, to the surface so that we can even know, what that cycle of our life looks like.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you said that really strikes me is that money piece, because we are, again, in this society, heavily conditioned, whether that comes from your family of origin, just the community you grew up in, whatever it is, we are so deeply conditioned to chase money. And it's so unfulfilling,
Yeah.
the money. Uh, you know, just in complete honesty, like, I've had money and I've not had money. And personally have found them to feel remarkably the same, because I don't have a lot of attachment to the money. And people always say to me, like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say, like, you currently do have the means to, have your home and drive your car and travel around and whatever. But all I know is that I personally don't feel different. Like, the struggles that I had when we had no money versus the struggles that I have now, potato, potato. Like,
Yeah.
there's, I have to be the same. I have to live in that and find joy and find peace and find happiness, regardless of what my bank account says. And I know that's easy to say now, and
Yeah.
there
But
was, that was hard.
it's so true though, right? Because um, the way that I look at that, right, is I think what you have to be very clear on with like your purpose and your kind of this overall like journey of where you're trying to take your life. If money is what props that up, and if money goes away and now all of a sudden your purpose is gone, there lies the problem, right? Like
That's
the
exactly head on.
yeah, so like the way that I look at it is with my faith and with my family, those two things will be there with money or without money. It doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
right? So that's for me what's been such a huge enlightenment is it takes the attachment away from the result of like I need more. I actually don't. I need more time with God. I need more time building my relationship with Jesus. I need more time to get to know my wife better and connect with her in a deeper level, and with my kids, and truly understand who they are and what they want to do and where their purpose lies. Those things can happen in a tent or in a mansion. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter, right? So, and again, and then when you release yourself from that result, all of a sudden you find yourself in a position that you maybe thought you wanted or that you think you want, but you're like, hey, this is really nice. God's blessed me with this stuff, but right, I don't have attachment to it. Like if it's gone tomorrow, I don't really care.
Yeah. The word that comes to mind as you say that is contentment,
Yeah.
which is just that piece of like, I'm the same in whatever circumstances come my way, for that exact reason. I'm not attached to the end point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And can you be content in a tent versus in a mansion? You know, Or
Yeah.
can you once you get to a place where maybe life is physically a little bit more comfortable, can you just be good staying there and not still wanting more and not still, wanting whatever that next groovy thing is, or a second home, or whatever. And I mean, God bless anyone who makes the choices they make. Everyone's entitled to live their life exactly how they want. But can you be the same? Can I myself be the same regardless of
Well,
what the circumstances are?
and think about some of those phrases you've heard in your life, right? Like there's always someone richer,
Yeah.
right? Like that to me is a perfect way of how we're conditioned to think, right? It's always can be better. It always can be better instead of being content. And I think what's so funny is when I was thinking about this topic for our discussion early on in life, like I would pick up like a People magazine and be like so into like what these celebrities and all these people are doing. Like, oh man, they're walking their dogs. Like, right. Like the fact that I cared about that was because I viewed those people as these people are famous and they're rich,
Yeah.
right? So they must be cool. Whereas now, you look to people like a David Goggins or somebody like that, right? Like they never, you don't know if he's a multimillionaire or if he's dead broke. All you know is that he cares about, he's on a pursuit of something great, right? And I think that's what's so cool is the people that, to me now in the stage of life that I'm in, if their lead is money, there's probably something there that is off, right? If their lead is their purpose, if their lead is their passion, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is really cool, right? This guy might be just as rich, but all he cares about is this pursuit of whatever he's after,
Yeah.
he or she, whatever they're after, like the Courtney Dauwalter, like watching her go on a 250-mile run, like that is something that's really cool to follow, right?
Yeah.
And you can look to that and be like, man, think of the discipline and the commitment and the preparation it takes to live a life like that. You don't
Yeah.
even know where she lives or what her house looks like, right? You just know that
Totally.
she can go up into the mountains and run 250 miles. It's awesome,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
So, so I think stuff like that. I think that's where it's the shift in my life has really come of like the things that I truly appreciate about people. It's not that superficial stuff anymore.
Right. Right. Absolutely. A couple of things that really helped kind of shift some of that for me in terms of understanding, because once I came home from the working world and was a stay-at-home mom, which is not for the faint of heart, right? Like you're hanging out with toddlers all day. Um, Once I came home, there was a period where like it also felt like, oh, well, this is different than I was expecting too. Like I'm not quite the person I want to be in this role either, which was super interesting to me. I thought I was desperate to be a stay-at-home mom. But a couple of things that really shifted that whole scenario for me and gave me so much more clarity were moving my body. Like, I think I've said this before. I have a whole child that exists because I just went for a workout one afternoon. Thought we were done. I was like, came home from the elliptical and was like, wait a second. We're supposed to have another baby. So the clarity that moving my body has provided has been huge. And then different practices around awareness. So, like breath practices, meditation, visualization, those have been incredibly impactful in clearing out the clutter of what any story is, what anyone's perception of me might be, what my own perception might be, and just gets it really granular. And it's like takes the funnel and brings it whoom, like just down to this one or two nuggets. But what for you, Jake, what have been some of the practices that give you the clarity so that you can know what your quote unquote it all is?
Yeah, so for me, for sure, it's starting every day with my connection with God. I mean that to me is a big deal. It's something that I heard somebody say it a while back, but they said if your fear of God is strong enough, then your fear of everything else goes away.
Hmm.
And I think that's really cool because it's not like I fear God like he's going to kill me or take my life. It's like the reverence of the power of that being, right? And what that can create in your life. So I think for me, if I start every single day with connection with that first, with God, with Jesus first. Then from there, I work into my breath work with either a meditation or a visualization practice. I really love to visualize how I would like to see my day go. I think that is really helpful, just that concept of winning in your mind first. Even though most days don't go that way, at least you have a game plan for what's going to happen. um, and then it's the movement. It's the for me it's either a CrossFit workout or um, some type of quicker, hard, intense movement like that. So um, those things really ground me and give me the opportunity then to have more of a filter, like you said, of as things come in. And this is something I'm working on a lot, and it's tough, and I still catch myself not doing it very well. But as things come in, if I've done those things first, I can say no more frequently because the yes is so much more powerful. I know what will enhance what I'm really trying to do with my life instead of just caring so much about what other people think. So it's just like this yes first, like even though you know that you're gonna half-ass that task or you're probably gonna let that person down, but you don't want to do it in the moment. So it's like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Now all of a sudden you just added one more thing to your plate, trying to have it all right and be
Mhm.
all for everybody. um, that is where, right, that concept for me I think about all the time is like you said earlier, like being busy is like what we're supposed to be. But I truly think that that's where the devil lives, is in that busy, right, rat race of life, because you're not actually even gaining an inch towards like your actual purpose or your actual reason for being here, you know.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, there's so many things you just said that I totally agree with. And I think, when you think about dirt diving your day and trying to really get clear about the commitments that you have for any particular day, in that vein of having it all, another trap I've found for me personally has been that there are so many things that are in line with what I want to do with my life and who I want to serve and where I want to be impactful. And it's really hard to say no to some of those things. And last year, even like this has been a huge commitment for me this year. Last year, I was in a little bit of that rat race of doing things I cared a lot about, both with my family, becoming certified as an unbeatable mind coach, taking on some new training through that. I mean, there were a lot of things where it was like a hell yes, like I am in for that. But what I forgot to do was take a very legitimate look at my calendar month by month or even throughout the year, and then actually realistically say, like, what can I say yes to? And what ended up happening is that I had all of these yeses that were like from my heart, but I didn't have the time, like just in a day, to do them all.
Yeah.
And so this year I had to whittle it down even more. And now I put far fewer tasks even on my calendar, because I know that even if those tasks are leading in the right direction, I have to be present and I have to be alive and I have to be well slept and I need to take care of my body before any of that can get done in a functional way. So I hear you on that, like saying yes to the right stuff. But also then, like for me, the next layer has been, even when it is the right stuff, what is my capacity that I can actually bring to it? You know, one of my principles, my first principle is family first. And I found that last year, was I super connected with my family? Yes. We actually like loved quarantining together. Like there were a lot of things that were very oriented toward family first. But I found myself making decisions that actually weren't thinking about the impact of my family first. So I had
Yeah.
to come back to that. Like, this is a guiding principle for me. How can I create the space so that that remains my number one and still take on these other things that, yes, are really important in the scope of my life, but I can't erase that first thing. Like if that first thing isn't there, I don't even care about the rest of it.
Yeah. And I think what you said was awesome, right? Because if you get down to that point where it's like everything you're saying yes to, right, is that hell yes, like this is good. That gives you then that list that you can narrow down to what you're capable of doing now, and then having the honesty and the respect with those other commitments of telling those people or telling yourself if it's something that it's just for you with you, of like, this is something that I will do, just can't do now, right?
Right.
I would love to visit it in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, whatever it is. Um, and really that's like where I'm at in my life this year. Last year was a pretty challenging year for me personally, which now looking back at it, I actually am super happy that it happened because it's part of the path of like this path that I feel I'm on of truly figuring out myself and all this stuff, right? Sometimes that comes with some darkness or some struggle, which is okay. Um, so where I feel I'm at right now currently is like God's telling me, just you got to just hit the pause button,
Hmm.
right? Don't take on any new commitments. Don't take on any new relationships or anything new. Like just be still and listen.
Hmm.
And if the answer is, hey, this needs to go, then get it out of your life, right? Or if the answer is, this is where it feels right to move in the right direction, then that's where I'll go. But it's such a refreshing feeling to just feel like, even though I'm totally okay with coming back from, like, I was maybe running and now I'm back to crawling, but
Yeah.
it feels great. I feel like I'm crawling, but I'm at like I'm on a different plateau, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
It's like starting over, but at a new place.
Yeah.
And um and that's a great feeling. And I think I got there from taking on too much, being super busy, not sleeping, not right, all of that stuff that I guess we're conditioned to think, well, that's what working hard means.
Yeah.
Really, that's just spinning your wheels, you know. That's all that you're doing. I gained no traction but took on 1,000 things.
Right.
So it's I think, like I said earlier, it's like a work in progress of what is truly having everything, right? I think that's different for everybody, and it maybe is different for different seasons of your life too. but
Yeah.
but I think just for now, and forever, at least, knowing that the core foundation of my life is my faith first and then my family, that can't be taken away by anything. I mean,
Right.
if you really truly break it down, right? Like if somebody came in and killed me, they can take my life, but they weren't able to take my time or my faith, my time with my family or my faith, right?
Yeah.
Take my life, whatever. But so it gives you conviction, right? It gives you the ability to stand firm in your belief, like that country song, right? Like you either stand for something or you fall for everything.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's so true, right? When you're busy, right? And you're just, when I was in that phase of caring about what other people thought, didn't care about myself, didn't care about anything. Like, as long as everybody thinks I'm cool, then I must be cool, right? Now you're falling for everything. You're
Yeah.
literally just like wandering in the wind.
Right.
And that's not a good place to be.
Yeah. For me, when you say like your core, those two things, if those two things are it, that is having it all, that really resonates as true to me. And mine is very similar. When I think about broadly what it means to have it all, to me, there's only like two must haves, and one is love. I don't care what that looks like to you, if that's love of a God, love of a family, love of a friend, like whatever that is. We need love, and we need our physical needs met, right? Like we need clothes on our body, we need a roof over our head, we need some heat, some of those kinds of things. But like knowing that that's all I need to have it all. Because if I, like you said, lived in a tent, but I had so much love, everything for me past that becomes a choice.
Yeah.
And so trying to make those choices intentionally, right? Like because I thought about them instead of because they just happened to me. And I think what you said about be still and listen is so true. My personal experience has been that a lot of people find breath practice, meditation, like getting into the practice of it very, very challenging. And I was right there when I first started. And part of the challenge is that you sit down and you're supposed to be quiet, but your mind is going at a gajillion miles an hour.
Yeah.
Or I also have had the experience where my emotions are like running the show and I'm just riding the wave of that. But what you said about be still and listen, like cultivating that space where you are still and you can let your thoughts quiet, suddenly, decision making becomes very clear. It becomes so simple
Yeah.
when you have that space of silence. And I call it space because it is like a void, right? Like it becomes like a spot you're sitting in, which is, I think, hard for some people to grasp, but at least that's
Well,
my sensation.
and I think that idea of listening, right? Like, I know for a long time in my life, I was waiting to like hear God's voice, like storm into my mind and just be like this super loud. Um, and I still pray for that, right? That would be awesome if that happened. But what's really interesting is when I say that, like, be still and listen, if you calm your mind to all that stuff you just said, right, of the thought patterns and all that stuff racing through your mind or your emotions or whatever, when you are able to just sit there and breathe and control that stuff, that's when, like, maybe you see a billboard that all of a sudden just like wham, just smacks you right in the face. So like it has some message that you've driven by 1,000 times in your life, and then all of a sudden you see it, right? Or something that you read in a book, it just like strikes you differently, and it goes to the core of who you are. I think that's what like the listen part is, right? If you clear, like you said, if you make that void, if you clear the space, by working on those practices to control your thoughts and your emotions, now your awareness is so heightened that you finally see this stuff for the first time ever.
Yeah.
That's
I just
what's really
had that
cool about it.
experience last week actually, because I um just in complete honesty, I've really had a challenge lately around like the emotional effort that I will put into somebody else's struggles.
Yeah.
And that's been a long-standing pattern my whole life. And in one day, so I've been trying to unlayer this. Like, where does this come from? I've been contemplating it before I go to bed at night and see what happens in my dreams. I'm meditating on it, like all these things. Like, what is the pattern? What's the underlying? What do I need to know about this? And within just a couple of hours, three separate things happened. One was that, like, I am a person who wants a problem solved now. Like, I want problems to go away as quickly as possible. I want there to be as little suffering as possible for everyone that I care about. And so inside of just a few short hours, there was a teammate of mine sent me a poem that was, the whole thing was about patience and waiting. So that was one. The next thing was that I was just contemplating, like, from this perspective of wanting to fix things, what music, like, what comes to mind when I think of, like, what resonates as that. And the song that came to mind was Wait for It by on the Hamilton soundtrack. I'm not I'm not lying or I'm not waiting. I'm lying in the words are going to trip me up. I'm not falling behind. I'm lying in wait. Like, I'm
Nice.
ready. I'm here. I'm finding my space, my turn, my, and to me it said, like, I need to cultivate more patience.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was that happened, and this was like shocking to my core, was that I was emptying out this closet that my daughter's taking over as her art room. I was emptying the boxes out of this closet, and the only thing left on the floor after I carried out the tubs was this teeny tiny newspaper clipping that, when I flipped over, was the clipping that was from the accident that I was in. You know, Rochester man dies, involved, blah, 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 Nicole Marie Taylor. I'm like, holy shit. Like, what is, like, inside of a couple hours, two things that were about patience and waiting. And then, like, oh, wait, maybe what I've lacked is some patience with myself. Like,
Hmm.
or I've been too quick to want to just boom, get this over with, get the suffering done, when maybe there were more lessons to learn, or there was something else that was there for me. And it was like, but all that can happen, and I can pay attention, and, like, just knowing this one thing about patience and being okay, like, in that space between, like, the suffering and the end point, whatever that is, the contentment perhaps.
Yeah.
Like, I need more of that. And I would have never been open to that information that was just sitting right there waiting for me had I not created some space and awareness around it. So that's kind of a long way of saying that I completely agree.
No, well, I love what you said, because those are perfect examples, right? Of like, of just being still enough, I like internally still enough to see those things, right? Like the day before, you might have just picked that stuff up and just kicked it into a threw it into a drawer and just whatever, right?
Right.
Um, and that's what I think is so cool about it is, and an example that I have recently, very similar to that, is we were sitting in our coach's room the other day, and I was talking about some things in the Bible and talking about Jesus, and I had mentioned that Jesus was 33 when he was crucified, right? And then one of the other guys said, "Well, that's really interesting because we have 33 vertebrae in our spine, right? Very interesting." And then we're
Yes.
sitting there, and there's a puck bucket in the middle of the room, and I said, "Wouldn't that be crazy if there was 33 pucks in that bucket?" We dumped them out and counted them. There's 33 pucks in that bucket.
Oh my
And
God.
and what I said to him is, I said, "This is what's so cool to me, right? Is this stillness of just being aware and being present and being connected. It's that, like that for me was like one of those examples of, like, if two or more gather, Christ is present. Like he was boom, like it was like he was there, right? And then showed himself through numbers, or however you want to say it. But it's more of like that, just being super aware of everything around you. And I think what's really a kind of a cool exercise that Haley and I will do sometimes. If you ever sit in a restaurant, like usually like your life's so busy, right, that you're just like, you eat your food, you pay your bill, you get out of there. sit down in a restaurant one time and play the game with whoever you're with of like, okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to survey the whole room, the people, what they're wearing, the tables, the waitress, the bartenders, the glasses, everything, right? And then I'm going to ask you some questions like, what is that? The guy in the far right corner, what color jacket does he have on? If you just
Yeah.
literally sit there still, be super present, survey the room, all of that information comes in and you retain it, at least enough to give the answer back, right?
Right.
Whereas when you're busy, somebody could come up behind you with a knife and stab it in your head and you wouldn't even know they're back there.
Yeah. I would have no idea.
You know? So even though, hopefully what people understand is we're not saying like you have to sit in your basement and you have to like knees crossed breathe for 20 hours and that's your day. It's like, no, you need to go out and do whatever you is serving your purpose, but you can still have stillness in that. Like when all these crazy thoughts come in, right? Like what's your pattern to slow everything down, to have some type of discernment of like, okay, what's good and bad here,
Right.
that's stillness to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing along with those stillness practices that have really been helpful to me to really understand um, what what I do care about having, what having it all really looks like for me. A practice that has been super helpful has been like the unbeatable mind, which you and I coach, of course. The three P's,
Yeah.
really digging into what you're passionate about, what your principles are, and then what your purpose is. And that's something that as part of my morning practice I do every single day. I don't write it out, but I have them on note cards, and if it's super quiet in my house, I'll just read it, but otherwise I'll read them out loud. And it helps act as like a guidepost because those things are things I care so deeply about. And they're really like the only things that I care about truly, like in my soul. And so connecting with that every single day has been super impactful because then it's like it clears the clutter even more. Like, yes, the silence, the breathing, prayer, I mean, all those things like are part of one practice for me, but I finish it before I do my, dirt dive for the day of what I want my day to look like or the commitments I have or whatever. I read those three P's, and it's like if there's something on there that doesn't align to that, like I can have an uncomfortable conversation and say I'm really sorry, but this is not gonna, I'm not gonna be able to be there, or I need to cancel or whatever. Because if I'm not holding true to those three P's, like I'm misaligned. My energy feels totally off. My focus is totally off. Whereas if I'm aligned in my thoughts and in my actions and how those line up to where I want my life to go, it's like even the hard stuff becomes really easy.
Yeah, exactly. Because the even the hard stuff it's still a step forward in the journey, and I think that's we're so like, we put this armor up to like, oh, we don't want to struggle at all in life, like struggle's bad, which what I found in the last year of my life is, well, actually struggle is necessary, you know like sometimes if you're having a hard time coming to an answer, the unfortunate part is that answer might be in the bottom of that pit where you just gotta keep digging through all the crap, right? Whereas I think what we do really good at is, instead of digging through that pit, we just make the pit deeper, chuck all that stuff even deeper down in it, and then we layer the dirt on top of it, alcohol, whatever, right?
Yeah.
All these things that we use in our lives to block that stuff out. Where if you were to ask me like what is having it all, I think that's being so grounded in what you believe in, that if somebody came up to you in the street and put a gun to your head and said, what do you believe in? It should be that quick. What do you stand for? Right? Boom. It's just answered now. It's not something like, I wonder what that is, you know?
Yeah.
Because from there, then you can be like you had mentioned earlier, then you can come at every single interaction with every person you meet in a position of love, right? I know what I stand for. I would love to know what you stand for. And if there's friction between those two, that actually is okay. That's where we both have an opportunity to grow now instead of coming at it with anger, like I'm right, you're wrong. Right. I think if you truly are in a place where you feel like you have it all and you truly understand the journey that you're on, you would never think that way about somebody else, you
Right.
know? And that's where it's been such a last year was such a good thing for me because I got all caught up in all this political stuff and all this crap going on in our world, right? And I dug my heels in on one side, and now you're coming at a place from anger. It's resistance of I don't want to hear what you have to say because I'm right.
Yeah.
And that's not being true to your purpose or your stand. It's just it's not, right? If you feel comfortable with that, if you feel so convicted of where you're trying to go, then other different opinions wouldn't phase you.
Right.
You would take it in and you'd say, oh, that makes sense to me. And if something doesn't, you could come at a place of love and say, well, help me understand that a little bit more.
Right.
Right. Or we probably aren't going to see eye to eye here, but that's actually okay. I still love you as a person. I still respect you. Right.
Yeah.
As long as that's reciprocated, we can be harmonious in the same world,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So that's what I think of this topic of like what is having it all. I just there's like that piece of knowing who you are, being super comfortable with whatever that is, and then taking that out into the world and being of service to people regardless of if they think the same way you do or not. I mean, that doesn't really matter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You couple that with, I mean, really, I mean, I can almost like cry at a drop of a hat, even just thinking about it. But it's like really having it all to me is having like peace, harmony, and love in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Anything past that is a choice. And so I have to be really clear about what my choices are and why I'm making them. Because even, some of the work I do now, there are times where it is a friction point for my family because might they might not like the scheduling or they want me to do X, Y, or Z, but I'm on a meeting or, whatever it is. Like there's still some friction points. But that curiosity piece, like you just said, like, okay, can we maybe like you guys are my number one priority. Like everything else could go away in an instant. And if I have you guys, we're good. And so let's like tell me more about that. Like, what is your experience when I can't do the things you want me to do, or you have a different expectation of what a night looks like that maybe is different than how it turns out, or whatever. But that curiosity leaves like this wide open door because then I'm not digging my heels in. I truly aim to understand. And they know that.
Yeah. And that's like true strength to I mean, especially as a man, um the ego can get so powerful sometimes, of like I got to be this man and I can't cry and I can't show vulnerability. And right, like for a long part times of my life I thought like, well, if other people knew that like my faith is the most important thing in my life, they might perceive that as weak, you know where the enlightenment in my life has come of in this topic of what we're talking about, that is actual strength, right? Like if people view me as, man, there's something different about that guy, and when I talk to him I've realized that his priorities in life are Christ and his family. He's okay showing emotion, he's okay being vulnerable. That actually takes a lot of courage, right?
Yeah, for
the
sure.
other the other way of living is right? It's all ego. It takes no courage to live that way, right? The first 10 years of my adult life, going to bars and getting in fights and doing all this stuff, right? Like, oh, I'm this tough, big, tough guy. I was afraid. I was scared.
Yeah.
That's why I acted that way. You know, when you can find that peace, like you had said, and when you can encounter people with love, even if you know, right? Like there's people in my life that I interact with that they trigger me for sure, right? The difference is instead of acting in impulse, it's again creating that space, allowing all of those emotions to rush in, and then only keeping the ones there that are going to serve the interaction to be good, or to be good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's having control over that. It's that to me is like that place of peace, of like really knowing like I'm on the right path, and I'm getting closer and closer to having it all, right? Like things are all working, life is flowing well, right? Every relationship, all these interactions, like they're positive, there's something that both people are taking from them,
Yeah.
right? Then all that other crap that we worry about, finances, houses, cars, blah 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 blah, whatever, all that other stuff, it's just like, oh, you look up and you're like, oh dang, I didn't think about any of this stuff for the last year, and somehow it's all here. I got it. It all just kind of appeared,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think I'm kind of having a chuckle to myself because I feel like the end point of our conversation is that, like, to have it all, you need very little.
Yes, you need to have it all. Personally, I think you need to have that stand. You need to have that purpose driven life of what are my main priorities, or priority, or what, if how granular you want to get with it. But the second that you become super convicted on that, then everything else can flow through that lens, right?
Right.
All your relationships, all your career opportunities, everything can come through that place where hey, it's either a hell yes or it's a hell no,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think in that purpose piece, something that trips up a lot of people is like, okay, well, I still need my house and I still need to, send my kids to school and whatever, like all those things. And it makes them feel trapped in their current situation, whether that's a job that maybe doesn't jive or whatever. But I would say flip that on its head and get really curious about how you can connect to your purpose starting in your current circumstances.
Yep.
Because then the changes can come naturally, and maybe there is suddenly an alignment where a different job or a new job is available, or maybe, you know, your family dynamic changes, you decide to downsize your house. I mean, who knows what happens as part of that, but start connecting like right now, just today, in my very exact setup that I have. How do I start to take actions that align to who I want to be, like the legacy of my life? Like if people, talk about me when I'm gone, like what will they have to say? And if that thing connects to like what is true to who I am, then I can start taking action. So I think about people who, like, let's say you sit at a computer all day and that doesn't maybe jive with, like, maybe you're a more action oriented person, or maybe you're a more physically oriented person, or whatever it might be. But like, okay, if your thing while you sit at a computer all day but the purpose of your life is to connect deeply and serve other humans in a certain way, which I would argue we all have innately somewhere deep inside of us. Like, every hour I can set a timer on my clock and I can go wish my neighbor in the cubicle over to, like, have a great day, or ask about their grandson, or whatever the thing is. Like, you can start to cultivate the environment for that purpose right where you are. And then at least my experience is that the changes then come much more naturally after that, rather than trying to force this, oh, I've got to figure this out and I have to drastically change my life and I have to, fix everything right this second. And it's just not true because it's
Yeah.
a process. It's not a one and done.
Well, and think about your circumstances in a positive way instead of a negative one, right? And I think that's where all of us, including myself, many times in my life have gotten tripped up, right? Oh, my boss or my coach, he hates me, right? It's his fault. Oh, I get this crappy job because I got screwed when I was in, high school, or my parents didn't have money, so that's going to be my life, or whatever the thing is, right? The second and I'm just going to speak personally about this. The second that I get into a place of negativity and complaint, there's no chance that circumstance is going to change.
Correct.
Zero chance. If you're looking at other people of it's your fault, you screwed me, right? You're doing is you're wasting the energy that you should be using on what can I do to change my circumstance, right? If you want more money, every single person spends money somewhere they don't need to.
Yeah.
So take the $5 you spend on chew and stop chewing and put it in a jar. You have more money, right? I want a new job. Okay, well, instead of blaming your boss for that, maybe think about, okay, what do I need to do to go from the level I'm at to maybe the next level inside my company, so then I can go find a company that fits my purpose. And now I'm at a different tier of job title, so I can move laterally to someplace else and then expand my career from there,
Yeah.
right? If you think about it that way, if you challenge yourself, if you are okay with the struggle and can think about it positively instead of in a complaint, like in a this whiny pouty, poor as me attitude, now you can move forward, right?
Right.
And I'm speaking to that very personally. When I get in that negative, kind of pouty, wussy, like wah, everything's wrong in my life. Nothing will change. It actually will get worse. You
Yeah.
know,
Grow
we
what
all
you
have more time. We all can have more money. We all can have different jobs. I don't care what the circumstance is or what you perceive as the roadblock. That's your fault, right?
yeah. There's always a different choice. Yeah.
And that's where we have to help each other. I truly think of like, hey, like on the way to school today, my son was being super negative about school. Didn't want to go. Got to wear a mask. Blah blah blah. Right? It's changing the story, dude. You get to see your friends. You love your teacher. You have social studies today. You really like that, right? Like think about it in the positive. So then when you get there, when the struggle does arise, right? You have something to look forward to. Well, yeah, this sucks right now, but in 15 minutes, I get to learn about my favorite subject in school.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it all, and this is actually something that's been really fascinating to try to really rally my kids around because, we forget that we are like odd from an automatic, like brain wiring perspective. We are geared to find negativity,
Yeah.
but realizing that it's a choice. And if you feed the negativity, it's going to grow. But if you feed the positivity, guess what? That grows. And at the end of the day, it's a choice. And
Yeah.
so we get to have lots of really fun conversations about stuff like that with the patients to realize like that is our anatomical functioning, survival based functioning is to find the negative and steer away from it, right?
Yeah.
But if you can just flip that on its head, the opportunities are endless. Our minds are so powerful. Yeah, that's probably a whole nother topic, but yeah.
Well, and do your best job to stay positive. Don't be a baby. Don't allow yourself to fall into this trap of thinking the world's out to get you. And then surround yourself with people that you can hold accountable, and they'll do the same for you because you love each other, right? Like your inner circle of people doesn't have to be that big. It
Right.
can be very, very small, and you can go very, very deep with those people. Now you have a system or a team of people that will hold you to a certain standard. If people are holding you to a low standard, find new friends.
Yeah.
And again, this is going into a way different subject, but I guess my last thought on all this is like, go at your life with such a powerful reason why, that you don't allow the negativity to stop you. It's going to come in, it's going to happen, you're going to have struggle, right? But if you can stay true to that stand, or to what you're truly fighting for, now you can move through all that stuff, and then you can approach the world with a lens of love and of service and of all of these positive things that will not only increase your own life, but it will enhance every single person, every single interaction you have in the day, right?
Yeah.
A little smile, a little "how you doing? I hope your day's going great." All these little things. It doesn't matter if those people think the way you do or not, right? That
Right.
interaction with them could change the path of their day.
Absolutely.
So get yourself right so that you can do that, so you can be that person. And that to me is what I would perceive as you're getting closer to having it all, right?
Absolutely. Whew. Okay. Well, before we go down a totally different rabbit hole, we will
Yeah.
wrap it up for today. Thanks everybody so much for checking in with Jake and myself today. We really are grateful for your time and love having the chance to share our sibling conversations with you. And we will catch you next time.